In episode 3, I talked a little bit about NBA Jam and NBA Jam Tournament Edition. NBA Jam, of course, is my favorite arcade game of all time, and NBA Jam Tournament Edition was a more than worthy follow up. While not quite as great as NBA Jam was as far as originality and things that it did, still ate a lot of quarters, a lot of tokens, and obviously a lot of my money as I bought different versions of the game for different systems, including getting me to buy an original PlayStation in 1995. What happened to Midway Sports after that was a big coming out party where there were a lot of games that came out that I just had to have or that I had to spend money in arcades playing. And I'm going to talk about a few of those in this video and then a few more in the next installment. In 1995, Midway introduced NHL 2-on-2 Open Ice Challenge into arcades. This is the PlayStation version, which came out in 1996. Open Ice Challenge is basically very much like NBA Jam, where you have a 2-on-2 setup. Of course, there are goalies on each side as well. And there's a lot of scoring, a lot of crazy moves, 360 twirls, and players will get big and light the net on fire. It's very, very NBA Jam-like, but it makes hockey a lot more playable as well to people that really don't know a lot of the ins and outs as far as the rules go. It's definitely an underrated game, and if you can find it in the wild at a flea market or thrift store or even online, I do recommend it for your library. It's not the most common game, and it is a blast to play if you can put it in your library. So that's NHL Open Ice. Then after Open Ice came out, Acclaim wound up buying the NBA Jam license, the intellectual property and the game engine from Midway Games. And there were a couple of prominent games that Acclaim came out with when that IP changed hands. The first one that I do have in my collection is College Slam, which came out for the PlayStation as well as other consoles. College Slam is basically the NBA Jam Tournament Edition engine that Iguana Entertainment created, but it uses college basketball teams, and of course they can't use real players. The other big difference is that instead of 2 or 3 minute quarters like you have in NBA Jam and NBA Jam Tournament Edition, you have halves. You have two halves which are a bit longer. This sometimes makes the games go on a little bit longer than it feels like they should. In NBA Jam, you had stoppages of play after every quarter, which kind of kept the pacing level. But if you only have one stoppage, which is at the half, the game feels like it just goes on too long sometimes, and it's difficult to get into. On the good side, as I said, it is a cleaner version of Iguana's NBA Jam Tournament Edition engine. There's some more commentary from Tim Kitzrow, which is very college-related, so you may or may not dig some of the puns that he uses. It's not a bad game, but it's not one that I would necessarily chase down for your library unless you're like me and like to collect these kinds of games. But that was College Slam. Now, the other game that came of the NBA Jam turnaround, at least for the PlayStation, was a version of Acclaim's arcade title called NBA Jam Extreme. Now, NBA Jam Extreme, unlike the previous NBA Jam games, which had digitized sprites, was completely polygon based and really wasn't very good. I never played the arcade original. I played the PlayStation version, and I was never impressed by it. Aside from Marv Albert taking over the announcing duties, and of course, when you're doing a basketball game, when you hear Marv Albert calling out shots from downtown in his famous "Yes" lines such as those, it's kind of iconic, especially back in that time when Marv Albert was so synonymous with basketball. But also, the loading times and the access times in the PlayStation version of NBA Jam Extreme were horrible. For example, you put the game in your PlayStation, you hit the power button, there's access times so that the game can load, which you understand. So you get to the title screen, all right, I'm ready to play. You hit the start button, there's a load time that goes by. Then you get to the team selection screen. You figure out which players you want. You pick out your players. The CPU picks out its players. Great, you're ready to go. More access time. And the access time is not all that rapid either. You have to sit there for a little bit, especially considering the other NBA Jam games and how limited the access time was, you'll definitely notice the longer difference here. Then once you start playing the game, the polygonal characters move too fast sometimes for conditions. It's really hard to get the proper spacing on the court for shots. It just feels all haphazard and weird. And it really wasn't a great venture on the part of Acclaim to take that and do that to the NBA Jam engine. I no longer have it in my library. I'm actually looking to pick it up again just to say that I have it. But again, it's another one of those games, unless you're a sports game fanatic, you're probably not going to need to add it to your collection anytime soon. So at this point, Acclaim has the NBA Jam license, but Midway, thankfully, and Mark Turmel didn't walk away from their NBA Jam roots. This led to NBA Hangtime, the PlayStation version of which I have right here in my hands. The PlayStation version is actually a little bit more difficult to come by these days. My Nintendo 64 in the background here is actually playing NBA Hangtime as well. If you have been looking at the attract screens behind me, you can actually see my name up on some of the categories. I have been playing this game some in my spare time. The Nintendo 64 version is easily the best version of the ones that are available. There's also a Super Nintendo and a Sega Genesis version of the game as well. NBA Hangtime kind of rewrote the rules a little bit, and while it did a lot of what NBA Jam did very well, they also added a few key features. The first is the ability to do double dunks and alley-oops, which is something that you really couldn't do in the first NBA Jam and then NBA Jam Tournament Edition. So if you're about to get blocked when you're going up for a dunk, you can pass it off to your teammate who's also charging the net, and it creates a really neat double dunk effect. You can also, if you happen to see your opponent cutting to the net and getting airborne, you can pass it to him for an alley-oop. And the dunks are thunderous. They're really neat to watch. The other neat thing about double dunks and alley-oops is the fact that if you can do 3 of those in a row without the opponent scoring, very much like the on-fire mode for NBA Jam, of course this is a lot harder to do, you get into a mode called Team Fire. Now Team Fire completely changes how the game is played because not one of your teammates, but both of your teammates are on fire at the same time for a very limited amount of time. This means that you can drop threes from anywhere within your opponent's side of the court. You can block shots, and you can get away with goaltending, and it can totally change the direction of a game around. And it really built on the on-fire concept from the first games, and I like that a lot. The other thing I like in NBA Hangtime is that you can actually create a profile that does more than just log your statistics. You can actually change the head and the body of your character. You can assign statistics to your character and improve those statistics by earning wins against a computer or against other players. You can also change the nickname that is used to call out your character on the floor. My character is almost always Frankencow. I don't know why. It's just a funny name, and I decided to run with it. I've run with it since I originally had the game many years ago. So you can change that call. You can give him big heads. It's crazy the things that you can do, or at least could do back then. And it changed how you played the game because you could build your own character, and then you wanted to go back and put quarters into the coin op, or you wanted to go back and continue to play games to increase your own character. It was almost, obviously it's not just like an RPG, but it has that RPG element where after you get 4 experience points, you can level up and build up your characters. And I always liked that. And then the other thing about NBA Hangtime that I always liked, and it's kind of a selfish thing, is that one of the guys who was in gaming journalism at the time, who was kind of an inspiration for me to start writing back when he was working at GamePro. Dan Amrich is in the game here. You can actually enter an initials and pin code combination to be able to get him with bunny ears and all, and be able to put him on the court. And that's just awesome because you can say, hey, I know that guy, and actually know that the guy is in the game, and I think that that's pretty neat. So those are the basketball games that led up to something that was completely different for Midway Sports, and changed the direction of their last few titles before the company unfortunately went by the by. And we'll talk about those games next time on Retro Unscripted. For now, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave comments below, or you can feel free to visit the Twitter feed for Retro Unscripted, which is Retro Unscripted with a little @ symbol in front of it. I'll link it below. Or you can visit our Tumblr page, where not only do I post pictures from my Instagram account, but I also write articles here and there, including a recent article about, or a recent review, I should say, about an iOS app called Call Them All, which is a pretty neat collection app for video game collectors that you might want to look into. So I hope you'll check those sites out. Thanks very much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you guys next time on Retro Unscripted.